Hello and welcome to Talk 90s to Me, where we like to perch our buttocks on the edge of a high stool, look sideways through our curtain fringe while snapping our fingers, and then, on the key change, stand up and look straight into the camera whilst emoting like an absolute mofo. Yes, this week I am delighted to say we are talking 90s British boy bands with the absolutely wonderful Michael Cragg, whose brilliant book, Reach for the Stars, 1996 to 2006, Fame, Fallout and Pop's Final Party. What a fantastic title that is about both boy and girl bands and boy-girl bands, and is an absolutely thrilling roller coaster read. Okay. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
It is lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Please show the world and describe, because this is an audio medium,
Sure.
what you have on.
So when I was promoting the book, I wanted to wear a piece of merch from a different band for every sort of thing I did. And so I'm wearing a Step 1 sweater, a white, it's got the cover of the album on it, and I've never worn it before. So I thought I'd premiere it today.
It looks absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's highly flammable, I think. And it possibly could get itchy in a moment, but I'm
just
happy.
don't get too hot.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't get too hot. Yeah. Okay, so look, we're going to focus on boy bands, although actually Steps will get a mention. And your book kind of starts halfway through the 90s.
Yeah.
What I want to do is kind of slightly build up to that, but basically my build-up is just Take That, right?
Yes.
So Take That obviously formed at the end, kind of at the end of the 80s, hit the world in the kind of 1990s and flamed out in 1995. They were unusual as a boy band in that they wrote their songs.
Yes.
And after them and E17, that was really unusual, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you were manufactured in all departments, basically. So you were put together and you were given the songs and you were told to just sing them and do the dance routines. And I think Take That are interesting because Gary was brought in as a songwriter. He is not, God bless him, a pop star in that mold. He couldn't dance. He wasn't really that interesting to look at. He was there to sort of write the songs. And so that was an interesting take. And it did give them this extra layer of credibility at a time when that was really important. You know, you needed to be involved in the music because otherwise you were just this sort of puppet that was being told what to do.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I think about Take That, they came just when I was at the end of Smash Hits, and they were kind of initially manufactured in quite a gay way. They were rolling around in jelly. Do you remember that?
Yeah, chaps,
bums
out.
Yeah, bums out, to go. And, kind of touring. Well, initially, actually, Jason Orange was a dancer on Hitman and Her, but they were kind of touring those little clubs and building a fan base. But it was when they hit Smash Hits, Top of the Pops, those kind of places, and found their girl fans that things really, really took off. And it's that the boy bands then milk, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Take That is interesting because they were so close to being dropped. You know, you would not get that later on. They had time to sort of try to work out what was going on. I think they were given one last chance at a single, and they used this clever thing, which obviously became a really big thing, which was sort of postal marketing. They had the idea, the label had the idea to kind of hand out these cards to fans. You could sign up, you could give the details, and then when a single was coming, they could send you like a postcard in the post, and you'd be like, oh my God, a new Take That song. So that's what they did, and it was that song, It Only Takes a Minute, I think, that gave them a top 40, which meant you could get on Top of the Pops. And then once you got them in front of a TV audience and you got them in front of the girls, and it wasn't just the sort of gay guys and the kind of niche channels that would play that video, it suddenly exploded. And then once they got on Top of the Pops, you could go on it again, and then they had a top 10 and everything was fine. And you could get Gary's songs out there. I think they still relied on the covers. I think Gary was very against it, but they were like, we need a hit. So we're going to have to do a cover. Then we can bring in your A Million Love Songs and all the rest.
Yes, well, exactly. I've written down my 3 big bangers for Take That, and that is A Million Love Songs, absolutely great. Back for Good, which obviously, and that's at the end of, that's released right at the end, just when Robbie leaves. And then Never Forget, which was released after Robbie leaves. And Howard Donald sang it.
Yeah, I don't quite know what would have happened because, they were very territorial, Gary especially, I think, about who sang what, and Robbie was, had beef with sort of only being given like a one line or whatever in a lot of them. Not that you asked, but my personal favorite, or one of the interesting ones, was Sure, which was the first single off of that album that had Back for Good. And I loved it because Smash Hits teased it that they were going to reveal this like crazy new look. And I think the crazy new look was like Robbie had shaved his head, Howard had got like an eyebrow piercing and maybe had some like twists in his hair.
He had some terrible dreads. Do you remember that?
And maybe Mark had done something a little interesting, but it was sort of New Jack swingy and the video was quite sort of cool. It was like a house party. And I was like, yeah, actually take that. There is something about them that's almost edgy. And then obviously Robbie left and that kind of fell away.
Left. The edge just went.
Edge from you two.
And there's one other small thing I think I want to say about Take That, which is Robbie came in when he was 16. And he left in 1995. And the reason why he left was because he went on stage with Oasis at Glastonbury in 1995 in his seminal red Adidas tracky top with his hair all bleached. And he had been told expressly by the manager, Nigel Martin Smith, not to go to Glastonbury. Yeah. And he went and kind of bothered everybody backstage, pulping everyone by saying his poems. He was adorable. He played like football with Oasis and everything. And because of that, they kind of brought him in and said, you just can't do that. And they sacked him. And he was 21 when he was sacked. It's so young. He'd had an entire career and was kind of left for dust, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting thing about this moment in time. The pop in this era is so short-lived. You know, Spice Girls even, it's such a tiny amount of time where their peak was happening. It was like 2 years. You know, the length of their career was sort of 3 years or something. Yeah. But the imprint that they had, and the same with Take That, I guess. And yeah, for Robbie to just be sort of ejected from this band that had already been really difficult and complicated for him. It must have been, you know, it did have a huge toll. But for the other four members, it was like this, and this is always the thing in a lot of these bands, is like you're relying on each other to keep this going. And this thing that's changed your life and is sustaining you financially and whatever, like you all have to play a role and you have to keep this going for as long as it can. And so to lose Robbie must have been hard for the others, just in terms of like, well, the band is done now. And obviously they didn't last much longer.
No, they didn't. They were kind of done then by 96, weren't they?
Yeah.
But anyway, they had been like a huge success. And there was like also E17. And after that, there's an idea, I mean, obviously then the Spice Girls come along actually in kind of 96. But if we concentrate on kind of boy bands, there's also, and I always forget them, sorry, Boyzone.
I know, they're easily forgettable in that way.
They really are. And they came around in 1993 and they were big. You know,
Huge.
They really were big. There was Ronan Keating, Stephen Gately, who sadly died later, Mikey Graham, Keith Duffy, Shane Lynch. And what's interesting about that is I can picture them all. Like I know who they all are. Yeah. And they were created by Louis Walsh and Simon Cowell, really.
Yeah, they were kind of put together to be the Irish Take That, like literally. But I think what they did is they forgot the element of Take That, which was the sort of dancing and the performance. You know, that as you said, they had two professional dancers in Take That, Howard and Jason. And then you had Mark, who just could do that too and looked amazing. And Robbie brought that. And Boyzone didn't really have any of those elements to them. They had the kind of Irish balladeer thing. They looked quite good in like a chunky knit.
Yeah.
You know, that was kind of it. Choreography sort of went out of the window, which I think is always a shame with a pop band because you're a bit like, well, what are we doing? I think Back for Good by Take That, which really set a template for them to be like, oh, okay, we need to nail that because actually that is more profitable. It sells more albums. It reaches like a middle market. We can sell them in supermarkets. It's that kind of thing. It doesn't rock any sort of boat. Yeah,
it's interesting because it's almost like it was like a deliberate decision. It was, we're just doing ballads.
Yeah.
We're not doing bangers. And that means, you know, ballads are essentially, they're going to be played at weddings and possibly funerals. And this is what we're here for. And when I think of them and Westlife, who follow them, they're the ones I think of like sitting on high stools and standing up for the key change.
That was choreography in that world. You know, like people would scream as if they had just been shot out of like a rocket or whatever on stage because they were doing something. And I think there were a lot of covers. I think that there were a lot of covers in this era anyway, but I think Louis especially really loved a cover, and Simon. You know, they'd given Robson and Jerome the biggest hit, you know, by giving them like a cover. So they knew what worked. They had a very kind of laser-focused idea of exactly what worked and who were the fans of these bands. And they did get that 100% right. And they ignored tastemakers and the cool kids and trying to get into like publications that would never cover them. They just were like, we need to just hit this demographic, and that's what they did.
And it's also really, you know, the difference between them and Take That and E17 obviously is they didn't write the songs. They were just handed the songs and told to sing them, weren't they?
Yeah.
There's a really, really brilliant part in your book. Your book is absolutely fantastic, but there's a bit where you talk to some of the fans.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where the fans use Smash Hits Guide to which part of Dublin Boyzone are from, and then basically go and find their houses. And Stephen Gately's mum invites them in and lets them have a picture of, they basically stand next to a Smash Hits award and take their photo. It's like
that's
adorable.
My friend Holly, bless her, who I went to university with, and she once slept in a vestibule, like a bank vestibule thing in Berlin, in Germany somewhere, because they hadn't booked a hotel, but they'd gone to follow the band in Germany. And so she just slept on the floor of this kind of bank cash machine thing. And yes, she did work out where they sort of lived from Smash Hits. And I think obviously the parents were very used to this happening. So the mum was like, sure, come in and like come out of the cold and you can have a cup of tea. But obviously the band were never there because they were being worked to death elsewhere. So it was like, I think Ronan's mum was maybe a little more like, please stop coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also what your friend Holly says, which is really brilliant, she said, I liked them because they were a pound shop version of Take That. Boyzone were attainable.
Yeah, exactly. Like if Take That as sort of the higher standard, you're not going to reach them. But if you can get a lower version, a sort of knockoff version.
And also they weren't as fit. They didn't look like they could run, really.
I mean, Holly's favourite in that band was Mikey.
Yeah, and he's not a runner.
And no one would say that.
No.
When she said that to me, I remember I was like, that's unique, and I appreciate your uniqueness, but I think that is what happened.
Yeah,
the sort of beauty standards for the lineups went down, or a mix. There was a mix. Someone says in the book that there was always two members. That it would be okay if on a magazine cover they were covered by the free gift. So you would need three, and then maybe one or two could be covered.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
There's a really lovely aspect in the book that is covered around this time where you explain what the fans were doing as well, because it's obviously way pre-social media. It's way before that, and they were like pen pals. They would write to one another about seeing the bands, or shall we all go over here, or shall we meet at this gig? And they had a friendship book made out of index cards, and they'd write down their favourite bands on it, and then right underneath everything that they had done with the band, e.g. chased through a car park.
Yeah. And then you'd sort of hand them over and swap them, and it would have your details on them, and you could kind of keep... you would want that kind of loyalty, or you'd want to know that you were in that group, which obviously is now so easy to sort of do, or it's disseminated in a way online. But before that, you were like, how do I speak to people that also share this, what could be quite an alienating passion? If you're super, super passionate about them, you need to have your like tribe of people, and you'd all descend on the studios at Top of the Pops or whatever and just share these cards.
And it's so different, because like now, you see people obviously, and if you saw a famous person, you might just go quick pick phone or whatever. Yeah. And it's absolutely not like that. You had a little camera. Maybe you would take a good photo. Maybe you wouldn't. It would take ages to come back. You'd have to sit outside their house in order to get it.
Yeah, you'd collect autographs, which
it
has
seems
been
so
lost,
old-fashioned, doesn't it now?
I think you would collect all of those things, all those mementos and memories and everything from that era. And I think some of that has gone. I do like that people still collect a lot of stuff. I think that really started here with the Spice Girls, obviously, and everything that they did. And, Steps had like a sort of tin of beans or hoops or something with their face, lots of stuff. And I think people do now collect more, which I quite like as someone that goes on eBay a lot and buys old tat. I quite like that.
Yeah, I'm up for that. Although they do charge a lot, don't they? Now
they do charge a lot. Merch is very expensive. I mean, K-pop, the stuff you can get if you're a fan of a K-pop band is wild and wildly expensive. Yeah,
wildly expensive. So basically, Boyzone, which, I struggle to think of a Boyzone hit. Can you tell me a Boyzone hit? You see, you're struggling.
No Matter What? Yeah, No Matter What was the one that was from like an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, and Stephen sang it.
Okay, well, we love Stephen, but...
Yeah, different beat that had like a sort of Lady Blacksmith Mumbars. Do you remember? Yeah. So there were a few.
There were a few, but they didn't hit our hearts.
No, and I think if you ask a lot of people, they'd accidentally say some Westlife songs. I feel like the two of them are so interchangeable in a lot of ways.
Very much so. And Westlife, which we can go on to, because we're going to go back to Five, who I love. But like Westlife, they were formed really because they realised that Ronan Keating wanted to leave Boyzone and they needed to replace him. And this is Louis Walsh who was kind of managing them, and Simon Cowell. And they formed in the late 90s. They formed in 1998. Nicky Burns, Shane Filan, Kian Egan and Mark Feely and Brian McFadden, who's the only one I really remember.
Yes, and he left.
And he married Kerry Katona.
Yes, yeah. So Westlife were originally called West Side. And then they realised that name had already been taken. And I think Louis presented them as a sort of finished band, and Simon was like, two of them have to go. They're like the ugliest people I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so then they were sort of recast in that way. And the thing about Westlife is it did feel like with Brian in there, you did definitely have a character. You had a sort of edge there that I think was missing perhaps from Boyzone. And so Westlife did have something a little different. And Flying Without Wings, I think Mark is an incredible singer.
Yeah.
So Flying Without Wings was or is a sort of classic of that boy band era, I think.
And they sold loads. Like in my head, Take That was the biggest, but they sell like twice as many. They sell 55 million records.
Yeah.
I mean, enormous. They're absolutely enormous, aren't they?
And they broke, I think, the Beatles record for number ones and all of that. So Christmas number ones in consecutive years or something. Or maybe that Sausage Roll guy's taken that now. But, there was a lot. They really managed to kind of, again, Louis and Simon knew exactly what they were doing. So they managed to release at the exact right time to hit number one, to sort of get the kind of Q4 big album, be in with all the big guys and just sort of shift to a certain demographic that they knew were going to buy the CD.
They said, so in your book, again, which I'm just going to say is amazing, but in your book, there's two quotes that I think are really interesting. And one is from Louis Walsh. And he says, the songs are more important than the band.
Yeah.
Which to me is like I suppose as a person who maybe is not a natural boy band person, I'm maybe more an indie person. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, obviously the band is really important, but you've got to have the songs, otherwise it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
But they're saying actually, it doesn't matter who sings them, it's the songs.
Yeah.
And that for me is wrong because you need a good pop star.
Yeah, exactly. And I think his point was maybe that Westlife had sort of endured because there wasn't like one big star who wanted to escape or could escape. And in a way that does make sense, but it's a risky move because, as you say, like if there's no sort of focal point to it, it can easily just sort of drift into the background.
Characters. I need for a pop star for me always, and this is has always been my mantra, I suppose. Really, it's like a rule. If you can't dress up as a pop star on Halloween, they're not a pop star.
Yeah,
they need to be a cartoon character.
Yeah, exactly. You need someone that sort of stands out. You want them to kind of blend in as a band initially, but then you slowly want to sort of get a sense that actually these are separate people because it can blur into one. But I think Louis was just keen on the sort of end game of them lasting for as long as they
And also
could.
He was just about money and power, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Him and Simon. I mean, that's what's really difficult for all these bands. If you have people like that running you yourself as a member of this band, it doesn't matter how many people are screaming at you, it doesn't matter how much money you're pulling in, you have no power.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that only that realization comes in, and then there's only a certain amount of time that you'll put up with that as it goes on. Even Westlife, they tried to sort of diversify and do sort of dancier songs or different kind of songs. There's a bit in the book where their PR at the time is sort of told to try and get them in ID magazine.
I know, mad.
Or like the cover of, Vogue or whatever. And it's like, that's not your place, as heartbreaking as it is, like this is where you are. And I think, that's why I do love Steps, is because they knew exactly who they were and what they did and why. And so therefore you can be happier to exist in like that bubble. But otherwise, if you start to want more, I know it sounds awful, but like the kind of ethos was you just should be happy with what you've got.
It's so weird though, isn't it? It's so like keeping them down.
Yeah, the more creative the person is, the less willing they are to do that. And Robbie obviously had something that he wanted to say, and the people that have kind of successfully come out of it and you don't remember them as being in that band are people that have that. No one, obviously, not everyone wants to do that, so they're quite happy to just remain.
And it's also, I suppose it's a little bit like some people are just, they're just really happy performing. They just want to get up, they want to sing, they want to dance, they want to go home. And like that, what is wrong with that? That's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
It's a really fantastic thing. But the other thing in here that's really interesting is obviously the songs are important, which is what we're talking about. There is no front person, which you've mentioned. And the downfall of every boy band and girl band is that they want to be cool, and that's where it goes wrong. And because there's a point where they're like, like, why are you not taking us seriously?
Yeah. And obviously around that time, you did have cooler bands. You did have E17, you did have All Saints. You know, Claire from Steps says she wanted to be in All Saints. She would see them because you'd all do the same events. You'd see all these people. You'd see how exhausted S Club 7 were, and you'd see how fabulous, you know, All Saints naturally looked in their cool clothes. And you were like, you know, Claire was wearing like the same PVC sort of red ensemble that she'd worn because there was no money. You know, they didn't have outfits. And so to see all of this was like, oh, why aren't I in that? And she said the longer she held on to that, the more unhappy she became. And so she was like, I just have to accept that this is what we do. And we're really good at it. And people do love it. So I'm going to sort of try and forget.
But it's hard, isn't it? Because these are individual people who are kind of being morphed into, obviously, an entity, you know, and then sold.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's different perhaps it's different if you're in an indie band, because you're very likely to be coming up with your own songs, you know, so you've got something of you within it.
Yeah, and so you're prouder to go out and sort of perform them potentially and talk about them. But obviously interviews were not talking about the music because it wasn't interesting and they often didn't really know anything about it. You know, what are you going to talk about to someone who just had to go in a studio and sing a line or whatever, or perhaps didn't sing on it really? And then you're being criticized, obviously. You know, no one's coming back to you and you're at least getting all the critical acclaim. You're not getting that either. So it's like
a tough life.
Yeah, you're just like, I have to believe in this. But actually, do I? And then no one else believes in it really apart from moneymakers.
Yeah, and a lot of these people are very, very young when they're doing it as well. So they don't even have, it's like they've got half-formed thoughts about it. So they just feel a bit unhappy, you know.
And they haven't got on a TV show like that would come later. They've sort of seen this as like an escape to go and audition and leave the call center or whatever that they worked in. And potentially this could be a dream, but it felt very far away. So to suddenly have it happen, you don't want to rock that boat at all. And you don't want to stand out or be seen as like argumentative or causing issues, or, you know, that's where we talk about in the book as well. Like, you know, you don't want anyone to know that you're gay if you're gay, because that is a risk. And that could mean if you're in a boy band, it ruins it for everyone else potentially. Because the idea was your female fans won't like you anymore and they'll all desert you.
They are so stupid, aren't they? I mean, that just really makes me laugh. Like, what do you think about teenage girls? They will like you even more if you're gay. I mean, are you mad?
Yeah. And
it's
you're
like
in a band
they never met a teenage girl.
Yeah, you're in a band of 5, so it's not, you know, or 4. There's not just one option. So you are like, it's fine.
This is so mad. That's just really made me laugh. But anyway, I mean, it was very serious for the people who were actually in the band. But like, it's a complete misunderstanding of your audience. They're mad.
Yeah.
At that time, you also say in the book, which I really enjoy, is like that what is used to market these bands. So it's not, obviously it's not the NME or things like that, but like things like programs like The Box and then CD UK.
Yeah.
And this thing called the Woolworth 6. I had never heard of this. Do you want to explain the Woolworth 6?
Yeah, so the Woolworth 6 was like, they would only stock 6 new songs a week. And so you had to kind of be part of that. So you had to kind of be played on the box. You had to sort of tick a lot of boxes to be that and to be on there. Because if you weren't, you were dead in the water. Because that was your core way of doing it. Obviously, you could do all the magazines and the TV shows, but if the kids then went to the shop and it wasn't there, they're not going to be able to kind of go home and look it up on their computer, on their phone or whatever. So you were like, if that didn't happen, you were done for, which creates this kind of frenzied panic. And then I think if you don't make the top 10 at that point, you're also done for. You know, maybe not even top 5. I think a number 7 song is still like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Whereas now, people would
be fine.
Yeah, kill their families for a, you know, new entry at number 7. But I think back then it was like, uh-oh, things aren't looking great, guys.
But that is really like the heating up of things, isn't it, in the late 90s, which I think obviously happened kind of with Boyzone, Westlife and the Spice Girls. This idea that you had to have a hit and you had to do it quick, or actually there are like 70 people that are like absolutely ready and waiting to step into your, not into your literal shoes, but there's another band coming up.
Yeah, like Girl Thing are the prime example of that. You know, Simon Cowell, who had turned down the Spice Girls, created this version of the Spice Girls, very manufactured a literal version of the Spice Girls. And they were all flown along with lots and lots of members of the press to the Eiffel Tower where the girls performed their debut single. And it was all this money was being thrown at it. And they recorded idents on the radio saying, hi, we're Girl Thing and we're number 1 this week. And then the song entered at number 8. I actually think it was the same week as Can't Get Out of My Head.
Oh God! Well,
So,
I mean, please.
it would have been, or maybe, it was against something huge, and you were just like, I don't think that's going to happen. So, and they got dropped and never heard of again. Pure and Simple, which was their song, got given to Hearsay.
Wow.
So you're like, the sort of sliding doors moments that would happen throughout this period are so heartbreaking in a way. If they'd have potentially got that song, would things have been different? Who knows? But there was so much money being spent that you had to have the returns quickly. And for Take That, that, as we said, that wasn't the case. But once the Spice Girls did it, and then once Westlife was sort of doing it every week, it was like one or nothing, basically.
Yeah. Okay, so look, I want to talk Five, and I didn't realise I wanted to talk Five until I was doing the research for this, and I was like, oh my God, they've had loads of bangers.
So many
they
bangers.
were really good.
Yeah.
So they were formed in 97. Sean Conlon, Richie Neville, who ended up going out with Billy Piper,
Yes.
do you remember?
Yes, and had a child with one of Atomican.
Yeah, I mean, he was the little cute one.
Yeah.
And then there was Scott Robinson, Abs, who I love. He's my fave.
Yeah.
Abs love. And Jay Brown as well.
Jay was my favourite.
Okay,
he was like
well, it's
the
fine,
bad
isn't
boy.
it? You always have to one each.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fine. Abs
Bad
is
boy
mine.
with an eyebrow ring.
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time that was my thing.
Oh,
There was a lot I didn't know about myself, but I did like Jay from Five. So then I was like, interesting. Weirdly, I had kind of forgotten how massive they were and how good those songs were. And then once I realized that obviously very cleverly they were kind of shipped off to Sweden immediately. I mean, with Five, it happened so quickly. It was like within 6 months they were top 10 of being formed. The Simon Cowell sort of signed them and then it all just went through the roofs. But they got sent to Stockholm to work with Max Martin and Dennis Pop before Dennis passed away. And so a lot of that first album is done by this kind of Swedish team who were about to get even bigger with Britney.
Yeah.
But Five were kind of the first, it was Five and the Backstreet Boys were kind of running in parallel, which is wild when you think about it. And America very nearly fell for the charms of Five, but Five put up quite a fight, I think. By that point, I think they were so exhausted that they said some choice things to a lot of important people.
Yeah, they were a complicated band.
Yeah. Yes.
But they had a lot of elements. So they were formed, there was an ad in The Stage, which really made me laugh. So The Stage is like a kind of theatre magazine asking for young male singers-dancers with attitude and edge. And it was Chris Herbert who created the Spice Girls.
Yeah.
So this is like 97. So the Spice Girls had hit and then they'd left Chris Herbert. So he was a bit like, what? And decided he wanted to make this boy band. Over 3,000 people auditioned to be in Five, including Russell Brand.
Yep.
Who performed Extreme Song More Than Words.
Actions and words.
Yeah. Anyway, he wasn't. He didn't enter into our lovely Five. Okay, so they had various hits, but I was watching some of their first hit, which was Everybody Get Up. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, Slam Dunk the Funk was
first,
their first one.
But the one
they loved funk.
Yes, but Everybody Get Up. It's like got a Joan Jett. It's got the riff from Joan Jett.
Yeah, and the video is the sort of in a school when then it turns into like a food fight. That was their thing, rebellious like from the beginning. I think Chris says in the book, Boyzone or Westlife would like bring you flowers and Five would like finger bang you in an alleyway. Like that was kind of the ethos between the two to set them up as completely different, even though Simon Cowell was obviously involved in both. But they knew that you already had the kind of angels and now you need the devils. And just like with the Spice Girls, they were put in a house together, which I think is crucial because not only were they put in a house together, but they were then put onto an ITV show called Neighbours from Hell, in which their sort of riotousness was part of the package. How badly they behaved was immediately like embedded into who they were, and you could see them being awful to their neighbours and doing all sorts of stuff. So that's how it started. So the whole idea was they would be awful.
Rebellious.
Yeah, rebellious and sort of, they could fight each other, other bands if they wanted. It was that kind of thing.
Yeah. Their style was quite interesting because when I was looking at that Everybody Get Up song and they're in an exam and the person who's looking after the exam wanders off for some reason, the old guy.
As they always did.
Yeah, that always happened, didn't it? And then somebody starts banging onto the table, and 5 arrive bringing the party. Their clothes, oh man, their clothes are hilarious.
It's sort of trench coat.
Yeah, they've got in. Do you remember that phase of wearing leather, but not a leather bomber jacket, which I can get with, a kind of leather suit jacket, but very large.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a look. It's terrible.
Very hot, I'd imagine. Yeah, everything about them, and right at the beginning it was very American. I think the mood board had sort of baseball and basketball kind of outfits and stuff like that. So it was very different. It's very sort of expensive looking. It looked good. They looked cool. The songs were really great. And they did have they could have been absolutely massive. I think it would have destroyed them in a way that they were destroyed in a lot of ways anyway, but I think it would have been terrible. But they almost got, Baby One More Time.
They did. It's, I mean, as you mentioned in the book, so Hit Me Baby One More Time, was written by Max Martin and it was passed on by the Backstreet Boys, and TLC.
TLC, yeah.
And then Simon Cowell offered him an Aston Martin luxury vehicle.
Yes.
If Max Martin would give the song to 5, but he'd already promised it to Britney.
Yes, he was like, I'm going to give this to this new girl called Britney. And obviously Britney, at that time, it was like, what? And Simon was just like, oh, good luck, basically, essentially. But I think at one point it was played to the band, to 5, and one of them said, this is a load of wank.
This is why we love 5. I'm sorry, that's hilarious.
In front of Max Martin.
Oh my God.
Who I think was still potentially I could give it to this band. And then after that, he was like, no, I don't think I will actually. So there were a lot of chances that were missed. They were in America and they did a big photo shoot and had a huge fight. And that could have been quite a crucial thing. They did a big thing for Disney that, they had all the opportunities, but they were just incredibly tired. Because there was a way of doing it then. You launched in the UK and Germany and Europe and you sort of did that first, and then maybe you'd go to Asia and you'd do that. And then America would be way down the line. Take That didn't really do it until Back for Good.
Yeah.
But with 5, it just happened everywhere all at once. So they were flying everywhere, doing it all. And plus not really getting on. And plus, Sean was 15 or something when he moved into that house and Jay was kind of 21. So you have a huge difference at that time in how developed people are as people. Sean wasn't really a person in that way at that point, other than being the sort of sad one in 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's kind of heartbreaking. I mean, they did, in 98, they had a US top 10 hit. Yeah. Which was When the Lights Go Out, and they got gold status. They then go on an 8-day tour to promote their upcoming album. They appear in a concert special for the Disney Channel with Bewitched. And I mean, there's quite a lot of things they got. They're on TRL on MTV. They kind of have a hit. I mean, it's number 27 in the US, their debut album, but that's not bad, I think.
No, at that time especially, that probably sold more than you'd need now to get a top 10 in America.
Yeah.
The sale, it would have been a healthy start to what could have been a big career in a kind of NSYNC or Backstreet Boys kind of way. Bye 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 was another song that they pitched to 5. It not a complete song, but again, they were that's not what we do. I think they were getting a sense, rightly or wrongly, of what their music was. And I think other people were trying to sort of push this other agenda, and they wanted this kind of rap pop sort of hybrid thing that they'd worked on, and so they sort of stuck to that.
But they did end up, I mean, as a lot of bands did, they do end up having kind of terrible mental health problems, don't they?
Yeah. I think by the end they were all in a bad place, but Sean sort of left due to a sort of mental health issue, and they were told he just had sort of tonsillitis or laryngitis, and not to kind of check up on him, just to sort of let him kind of rest. And then he's kind of replaced in the video that they did by a cardboard cutout.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And the video is sort of a kind of piss take of the music industry. There's a figure that's meant to be Simon, and it's all meant to be a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's,
That's incredibly hurtful. Yeah. Poor kid. Oh, my God. But I also just want to mention another banger of theirs. Keep On Moving.
Yeah.
What a banger.
It's so good.
That is I mean, you forget about 5. I would just
I think you do.
I would like people to go away and listen to 5 because they're quite really good.
The day they just started a nationwide sold out arena tour, you should all listen to the music as well, because I think it's not just nostalgia with them, I don't think. I think the songs really stand out. And also you're looking at Max Martin. It's not like he did them and then nothing happened. A lot of those really big producers started in this period. It's like Stargate, Max Martin, Steve Mack, who did a lot of Ed Sheeran stuff. So there's this is where that started in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And towards the end of the 90s, you kind of I have to say, you name quite a lot of bands and I'm like, I just don't know who these bands are.
Yeah, I did put them all in one chapter because I was like, I don't think we can stretch out Triple Eight to a whole chapter.
No, I mean, God love them. There's some of them I had heard of, 911 and A1, I'd heard of them. But then there's there's a lot of other bands who I just didn't really know who they were. There's one called something like Orange Orange.
Yes, Orange Orange, Upside Down. Yeah. There were so many bands.
Code Red.
Ultra.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Sure. All of those. I think what you had and what had happened with the Spice Girls was this just, what do record labels do when they realize that something is massively working? They just do lots and lots and lots of the same thing, or you try to tweak the formula ever so slightly. I think Triple Eight were even more kind of cool and sort of street than Five. They sort of took that template. And then you had Blue, who kind of took...
Blue, I do remember.
Yeah, Blue took a sort of different template. Yeah, and they were a bit more sort of
they were rude.
All Bar One kind of vibes, and they were in sort of suits or smart clothes, and the songs were a little bit more R&B.
But also, I just remember their dance routine. Their dance routine was rude. The first one they did on Top of the Pops, I was like, oh.
Well, there's that second single, Too Close, which is a cover. It is about, getting an erection while a girl dances near you. You know, so I remember being like, oh, okay, that's
it was kind of a bit further up.
Yeah, whereas those other bands, it was all just a sort of much of a muchness, and it was all kind of being oversaturated, which obviously tends to happen. I mean, A1 are interesting, I think, because they were put together by the same guy as Steps to sort of make this slightly different boy band, which was everyone has to be a songwriter or play an instrument or be both, ideally. And that's how we would make up this band, is to have our own writing team as well as being the band, which I thought was...
It's almost like going back to take that, isn't it? It's like you've got the... Or actually the Beatles or Blur or whatever, it's like a band.
Yeah, exactly. Let's have a band of talented songwriters and musicians who will also have to do dance routines and look not great at the beginning. And so A1 were that band, and they've kind of been forgotten. But there's a moment, I talk about this way too much, but there's a song by them called Caught in the Middle, which is, I think, unbelievable.
Okay.
And I think, because it was basically, they were very cheesy dance routines, looked kind of naff, did a really bad cover of Take On Me by a-ha that everyone hates, quite rightly. And then they were like, okay, we're sick of this now. We don't want to do this. We're going to put on layers. They looked a bit more Burton's by the end.
Yeah.
They made music that sounded like what was going on. Travis, Coldplay, the kind of bedwetters thing, but with better melodies. And Caught in the Middle is what Take That did a few years later with Patience. When Take That came back, they looked very grown up, and A1, I think, just did that a little bit too early.
It's always that, isn't it? It's always the timing is something you just can't.
Yeah.
It's like an impossible thing to understand.
With A1 as well, the sort of tragedy was they were huge in Asia, and they performed in Jakarta, I think it was, and there was a fan crush, and some of the fans died.
Yeah, 4 girls.
Yeah, and so in order to kind of honor the traditions there, they took a break. They could, they decided... I think it's a tradition that you sort of don't... You mourn for a certain period of time.
5 months, it said.
They did that. And, and in that sort of churn of that industry, it was a difficult decision to make, and one that obviously I'm sure a label wouldn't, want a band to necessarily take, because it can stop the momentum.
Which it did, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, that, around that time, this is just after the 90s, that they'd won Best British Breakthrough over Coldplay. I mean, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to kind of just slightly throw forward, but what is interesting about that time of boy bands? So it's like a frenzy, really. It's like a frenzy towards the end of the 90s. And then we end up in the 2000s with Busted and McFly.
Yeah.
Who are as in inverted commas, more authentic, meaning that they do they do kind of star jumps and play their guitars. And then, although I have to still say, I do love the music press, but the music press is bloody awful to those kind of bands. And the NME literally, with McFly, put a picture up for them. They're 16 and 17, the band, and they put wanker dickhead, twat.
Yeah.
And like they're 16 and 17-year-old kids. I mean, appalling.
And I think that was
anyway.
them going to see like a band that Enemy really loved, because they were fans of this band. I can't remember what they're called, like an American sort of Green Day-esque band. And they were going to see them, because they liked that band and they weren't even trying to sort of be in their space. They weren't trying to sort of be on the cover of Enemy or whatever. Yeah,
horrible. But anyway, I would argue that kind of reaction to the end of the 90s with Busted and McFly's, it was like, in inverted commas, more authentic boy bands, eventually one could say leads on to things like the Vamps, and maybe not the Arctic Monkeys. I do think the Arctic Monkeys are kind of slightly more rooted in like Oasis and Stone Roses, but it leads to a certain kind of band. Maybe we could say the 1975.
Yeah. No, I think definitely, I, growing up, listened to Michael Jackson for so long, and then suddenly I listened to like Bjork. And I think that really meant that in the future, I really liked weird pop music. So if all you listen to, or if what you really get into when you're young is Busted or McFly, you suddenly like this guitar-based pop thing with like interesting sort of weird lyrics. And then as you sort of your tastes progress or you grow out of that and you go into the next thing, you see the correlation between them. I don't think that's weird. I know some people be like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. But that's how it works, and those bands did present the boy band in a different way, in an interesting way, I think, but in a way that killed off the boy band as we know it, because there was no choreography. It was as manufactured as what had come before, but it looked more authentic because they looked like they didn't wash and they had, a guitar.
And it's sad, really, because I am a fan of formation dancing myself.
And I feel like the girls still have to do it. There are girl bands that do it. And K-pop obviously is a whole different beast, and we do see that. But I think the boys got, One Direction didn't do it. They knew that they couldn't do it, and they made a sort of joke out of people that tried to do it. And I think that's a bit sad.
Yeah, bring back formation dancing.
Yeah, there's nothing better. Something better than doing a formation dance, guys.
Exactly.
You might look ridiculous, which I guess is the big issue now, because it will just be disseminated across. There's that meme of Justin Timberlake, who a few decades ago, maybe, we would all be like, is the greatest dancer. And then, everyone was just showing him doing those same dance routines, being like, this is the most tragic thing we've ever seen.
People are mean. You're not allowed to grow old, are you?
You're not allowed to grow old, and you're also just...
And also, you're not
don't
allowed
embarrass yourselves.
Yeah, you're also not allowed to diss Britney, so like, tough luck.
Yeah,
tough luck.
that is also part of it, I'm sure. Him coming for Janet and Britney is like, okay.
Yeah, sorry, love.
Yeah, sorry, babe.
Yeah. Okay, so here at Talk 90s to Me, we're in the twist of separation and we excel at being free. And we also have a playlist featuring 90s music, which you can find on Spotify. Okay, Michael, what is a 90s track that you'd like to add?
I'm going to add Deepest Shade of Blue by Steps.
Yes, come on.
In honor of wearing this sweater, but also because I was listening to it on the way here, and, it's so close to that kind of house dance pop thing that was happening at that time. Like, I feel like if you tweaked it slightly and if maybe Steps weren't Steps... with the baggage that came with it, it would be like a song that people are sort of rediscovering now in a kind of 90s dance way. It could have been a song that someone...
You just put, in those situations, you just put it on a lyric list.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
add that to some other list on Spotify and people are like, oh my God, who is this? Like, who are these Steps?
It's like, what do they call it? Crate digging. Amazing. Steps, you say.
Steps, you say. I must find out more about them. And then they hear 5, 6, 7, 8 and they're like, oh.
Okay, that was Talk 90s to Me featuring the wonderful Michael Cragg, whose award-winning and unmissable book, Reach for the Stars, 1996 to 2006, Fame, Fallout and Pop's Final Party is out now and really is one of the best music books you are ever going to read. Look at its beautiful look as well. I mean, you can't if you're just listening to us, but it has lovely stripes. It has green and pink and yellow and blue and red stripes. It's just fantastic. You're going to see it really easily.
Can I test you? Can you... do you know the references that each of these fonts...
Okay, so these are all different fonts and I'm not going to get any of them, to be honest. No, I don't know them. Tell me. It's like Star Hits, no?
That's Smash Hits.
Okay, it's like... That's late Smash Hits, sorry.
That's Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
And that's actually Mystique.
Oh, okay. But I'm sorry, that's not original Smash Hits. So.
No, that's not. That's much more recent. Yeah, noughties.
Yes,
so I forgive you.
I'm sorry, I dismissed that. And also, if you want an alternative music book, I'm so bored of saying this, but I'm still going to say it. You could check out one called Uncommon People, Britpop and Beyond in 20 Songs, which is, surprise, surprise, by me. I'm going to stop doing this. It's like so boring. Anyway, subscribe to Talk 90s to Me on your podcast app. Join our Patreon for gorgeous merch and special extra episodes on things like trip hop and shoes. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky. See you next time.